Hey everybody, we're back at the 5-0 podcast. Today we are here with Jason Lacayo. He is a man of many skill sets and business ventures. And if you don't already know him, you're going to get to know him a lot more today. And so am I. I'm really excited. He's a police officer, public speaker, fitness influencer, sports coach, men's health and wellness advisor. He works with a nonprofit organization. He's a podcast host, amongst much more. I am inspired by you personally, and I am so excited to get to know you. But for our listeners who don't already know who you are, if you want to give them a quick bio about yourself, and then we'll peel back like the layers more deep and talk about everything we talked about above and more. So if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, you have the floor.
Okay. So first and foremost, I just want to say thank you for having me on your show. Truly appreciate this. My name is Jason Lacayo. I am from New York City. I was born in the Bronx. I moved to Westchester County, the city of Yonkers, when I was like 13. I'm the son of two immigrants from Honduras. And I became a police officer in 2005. So that is a very long time ago. A lot of people look at me and they don't think that I've been a police officer for this long. But this July 11th, I will have been a police officer for 19 years. So that is, a blessing in itself. I started out in the NYPD. I did 23 months there, where I was part of Operation Impact, which made a lot of waves in New York City. Basically what Operation Impact was just a bunch of police officers just being proactive. And as the years went on, it kind of became a political push point, with the stop, question, and frisk. So I did that for a duration of time when I was down there. And then I moved over to like midnight patrol and 4 to 12s. And then I transferred over to the city of White Plains, which is where I work now. I did about 18 months on patrol. And then I moved over to a proactive unit, kind of like a conditions unit or like plainclothes stuff. Did that for about 4 years. And then I moved over to ESU and I was there for a whole decade. Did that for 10 years and loved it. But towards the end of my career, I had a few checkpoints on my list that I didn't get to cross off. So I'm currently in detectives now. I'm assigned to the mental health outreach team, which is part of our strategic initiatives. And, I work with substance abuse and homelessness and the mentally ill. So that's currently where I'm at right now. And, you mentioned everything else. I coach football. Yeah. So you mentioned everything else.
That's amazing. Yeah. We're going to need you to drop your skincare routine for not looking like you.
It's pretty basic. It's pretty basic. Nothing extravagant.
Well, thank you for sharing that. So you have obviously a long foundation in law enforcement, and you touched on that briefly right now. But we're going to go a little deeper into that. So with your background in policing, so you already touched on the units. I was going to ask you what units you've worked, but as far as those units, what has been your favorite or maybe most impactful role as an officer that you've felt that you've had thus far in these 19 years?
What I'm currently doing right now. So I had a bout with depression during my career, and it was like towards the middle part of my career, and I felt like I was suffering in silence. And when I kind of came to the forefront, a lot of guys kind of opened up to me and was like, hey man, I've experienced some of the things that you were feeling. I just didn't know where to go, how to go about it. So I feel like now just being able to go out into the community and help, the community, of course, but help the guys that I work with and just people in this line of work, man, I feel like, we take this job to give back, right? And sometimes we get caught up in the day-to-day nonsense that, police work brings us. So to be able to go out and make a difference on a daily basis where I get to help people, I think this is the most gratifying part of my entire career.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I did some similar things. And it's like, as much as like being a beat officer is important, it's also just as important to be like, have that presence within your community with the uniform, but also like helping people and not, you know, you're still serving the community. It's just in a different way. It just looks a little bit different. What inspired you to become a police officer in the first place?
Come from a long line of first responders. So my father was in law enforcement. My uncle was in law enforcement.
Were they in law enforcement in Honduras or?
No, here. So my parents came here in their like early teens. So my dad was in the military, and then when he got out of the military, he joined the police force. So he was a correction officer on Rikers Island for 25 years.
Oh, I bet he has so many stories in Rikers Island.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
And he was there when it was like Rikers Island. It's a little different now. But my uncle was a New York City police officer in the housing bureau. So, I just used to see them. And, as a child, when you see, the people that you look up to walking around in uniforms, and, it's something that you aspire to be when you grow up. So it was almost like a rite of passage. I knew I was going to be in some kind of uniform, whether it be law enforcement or military. I was going to join the military, but right when I graduated, like 9/11 had just kicked off. So everybody that I knew was getting deployed. And I was just like, at that point, I wasn't ready to make that jump. So, did some school stuff. And then I was presented the opportunity to become a New York City police officer.
Amazing. My dad is a police officer as well. So I can totally relate. And as far as, and as far as, your family lineage of being officers, how did your family feel when you said you wanted to become a police officer? Were they supportive, or did they like deter you in another direction?
No, my family was extremely supportive. Your mom, is the one that's probably going to be a little bit overprotective, but she never once told me that, not to do it. She was very encouraging. I think the only negative part about it was, when I first got on, I was still living home, and she would just wait for me to come home. Mm-hmm. I'd be like, Mom, there's days where, you get stuck at work for 18, 19, 20 hours. You can't be waiting for me to come home. You're going to lose a lot of sleep. So don't worry. I'll make it home. If there's something serious, I'll give you a call. But I mean, that was the only downside, but no one ever talked me out of it. I was encouraged a lot by my family.
That's good. That's really good. So as an officer, what struggles did you face, if any, as a Black male in law enforcement?
There's a few different things that you struggle with. Sometimes you don't feel like when you work in certain communities, right? You're not viewed as Black anymore. You're viewed as blue. So that was like a huge hurdle for me. I wasn't associated with the color of my skin. I was associated with the color of my uniform, and I have a very interesting dynamic, right? So like I'm Afro-Latino. So I've always struggled with like fitting in, you know what I mean? I wasn't like Spanish enough to hang out with the Spanish kids, but I wasn't Black enough to hang out with the Black kids. So I was always somewhat of a misfit, So I learned how to navigate through life, early on by being somewhat of an outcast. And so with the police force, and I'm pretty sure you notice it, it's like there's cliques, right? It's like anything. It's like high school.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah. So, you kind of figure out who your people are, and you just kind of work through it that way. So I think the biggest challenge is just trying to figure out why I took this job, right? And not losing sight of that, because sometimes it becomes a numbers game, right? And, you stop looking at human beings as souls, and you look at them as numbers,
Yeah.
So I think that was the toughest part, just navigating through that, because obviously, I wasn't sent to a suburban neighborhood to work, right? I actually was sent to a neighborhood in which my aunt lived in, you know what I mean? So as a child, I remember going to this particular neighborhood and like seeing the things that were going on. And then, several years later, when I become a police officer, this is the very neighborhood that I had to patrol. So, wow. I mean, the toughest dynamic. Yeah. You get, you get to a moment of clarity, and you're like, what am I doing this for? Am I doing it for the right reasons?
Right. No, for sure. and we'll touch on it a little bit later because I did have some questions for from my followers about that.
Okay.
But do you have any advice for new officers beginning this career who maybe look like you, or just anybody really, if they're struggling in their own like sense of identity, but really want to be a police officer, or just started the job and they're maybe struggling a little bit with kind of what you touched on?
Yeah, you have to do a lot of soul searching. You can get lost in its job. I say this a lot. You see people in the worst of situations, and so if you constantly see that, then you might view, the community that you police, and you might view it in a certain light. Your perception of community changes. So you have to remember who you are and where you come from. Never lose sight of that.
Yeah.
Because I had a full circle moment in my career where I had stopped a kid and he was like 13, right? And he was a little bit of a knucklehead. You fast forward 10 years, the kid's 23 and he's a police officer. And he told me that, when I had stopped him, and I'd given him a little bit, I'd read him the riot act. I was just kind of letting him know that what he was doing was wrong and that the road that he was going down would probably not lead to a positive place.
Yeah.
It actually, he listened. He actually, took heed. And that's when I was like, wow, you never know who you're going to impact. So you have to realize, like, regardless of what happens on a day-to-day basis, remember who you are, where you come from. And, when you stop people, think of someone stopping a family member of yours. I think a lot of people lose sight of that. Because sometimes, we're human beings. We get emotional, we get caught up in the emotion. You can't let that emotion consume you. You have to be able to kind of reel it in and remember that, you're a public servant and there might be a little kid watching you, and these people, like when I take my uniform, I look like them. When I take my uniform on, I look like this. You know what I'm saying? So I think people forget that. They put the uniform on and it's like, all right. And then you take it off and you get stopped and you have a negative interaction, and it kind of gives you a little bit of hey,
reality check. Yeah.
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 You took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah. No, for sure. It's nice to know that, that there's officers, and I again feel the same way, that, at the end of the day, it's all about getting on people's levels and like, relating where you can relate. And, like when I'm on calls, especially like with other women too, it's like when they're going through maybe like something like a domestic, it's like, like I've been there, like I know how you feel, and like breaking that boundary of like, yes, I'm wearing this uniform, but I'm just like you. I'm another human being that has trials and tribulations in my life, and I have a family, and it's important for people to know that we're, just like them. We just have to enforce some boundaries and some laws when it comes down to it. But so I wanted to touch on this a little bit because it's something I can relate to, and I think a lot of my followers also can relate to. But I saw that you lost a coworker in the line of duty. Can you tell us about that experience?
Well, I've lost a few. I think one particular one you're talking about was a guy that I played football with. And that was a very eye-opening experience. I was brand new. Like I don't think I was even on the street for a year yet, and I lost somebody that I just met, and that was a big reality check, because I think when you take this job, you don't realize that you can die.
Right.
It's like you take this job because of, I wanted to become a police officer, good, benefits, so on and so forth, the pension, but you lose sight of the fact that you can potentially lose your life. And that made it very real for me. So I had to have a conversation with myself and say, do you really want to do this? Are you really willing to risk your life on a day-to-day basis? This is real. Like you can lose your life in the blink of an eye. And I toiled over that for a while. I lost a lot of sleep because, this is a young guy in the prime of his life. He was about, I think, 25 when he passed. And so, and I was a 22-year-old kid when I got hired. So.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you were young.
Yeah, and so, that was super relatable. So it just made me have more of a appreciation and live with more like gratitude and making sure that, I'm tactically sound when I'm out there and I'm not taking uncalculated risks, make sure that, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do out there and not lose sight of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally relate. And d- did you, obviously, again, you've lost more people than just this person you touched on, but can you give any advice to other officers who are like dealing with losing a coworker, like grief, and like how maybe what you did to like cope while you were going through this?
Yeah, just remember their legacy, like who they were. We took this job knowing that there's a potential that we could lose our life, right? So, um, there's nothing you could have done differently that was going to bring that person back. I think a lot of people
Yeah.
toil over that for a little bit because, sometimes it's an instance where you go on a call and something happens. Maybe they, maybe if I did this differently, this person would be here. You can't bigger than you and I.
Yeah, for
Something
sure.
much bigger. Yeah, there's something much bigger working, in the universe that we can't control. Unfortunately, we're born and, at some point we have to pass. Sometimes it's in a tumultuous manner. Sometimes, it's in a bed while you're sleeping. You don't take it so personally. It's not really much that you could have done differently to bring this person back. What you can do is just, honor their legacy and remember them in a bright light.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think that that's like super important. It's just like you can't change what happened, but you can change like maybe the future narrative. Like you can show that this person was a hero and what they've done and keep their name in the light. And that's like the most positive thing that you could do with the worst of situations. Um, so this incident combined with life and policing in general, what are some daily actions we can take to improve like our lifestyle? Or what do you do? Like, is there anything like daily that you do?
Every day I try to set myself up for success. So I wake up. Um, I'm a very spiritual person. I use the word spiritual or religious because some people confuse the two.
Yeah.
So, I wake up, I pray, I meditate, and I have like a journal that I journal in. And I used to call it a gratitude journal, but it's just a life journal. You wake up, you write your wins, your losses. I give myself a moral report card on a daily basis.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Cool.
yeah, and I'm never an A. And if you are an A, then you're lying to yourself, because if somebody cuts you off in traffic and, you're screaming at them from the top of the lungs and you're saying, some not so nice words. And
Right.
that'll drop down that grade on the moral report card. But just wake up and pour into yourself, man. You got to write your energy before you walk out into the world. And I think just with the combination of things, with personal life things, work life stress, making sure that you're balanced before you go out and interact with the world. I think that has helped me tremendously. And just being outwardly grateful, just for the simple things. I think a lot of people take for granted the fact that we go out, we go to work, we come home. That's a blessing in itself, that the
Yeah.
fact that you're able to like rest your head and then wake up and live another 24 hours. But just being grateful for those little things and doing, what I just mentioned has helped me out tremendously. I think that'll
Yeah.
help anybody.
Yeah. I have a gratitude journal. I just never use it. I
Oh, you got to
literally,
get to it.
oh, okay. You're inspiring me. And you mentioned balance, but that was my next question. It's like you do so much. And it seems like you stay so positive. I'm sure you have days where you fall off or whatever, like a normal human being. But how do you balance all of this together? Like how do you do it? How do you do it all,
It,
basically?
it it's tough, man, but you got to make time for the things that you want in your life. I wasn't always like this. It took me a while to build to where I am right now. Um, I was unhappy for like 6 years,
Wow.
and no one would have known the difference. And then when you realize like, where your happiness lies, you can control some of these things. There's external factors that you can't control, but I have the saying, you got to control the controllables. And once you can control the things that you can control, it makes life a little bit more easier. For me, just being able to, move my body and being around, my family. Those are the things that make me happy. The job is just a portion of your day.
Totally. Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people get consumed with that because this is not like your regular job, right? Your mindset changes when you become a police officer because you have to think like a cop on and off duty. But what I told myself is that when I take my uniform off, it stays in that locker. Or when I leave work, work stays at work. I'm not one of those guys that sits down and tells war stories. I leave that for I don't know, but I don't talk about the job when I'm not working. So, balance is connecting with human beings that you love and pouring into them and making sure that they're able to pour into you. Because I feel like, police officers are police officers 24/7, 365. Sometimes you got to shut it off a little bit.
Yeah.
And get in touch with like the real world, not cop world.
Right. And I think like you're a great example because you have all these other things going on for you. It's like to have like hobbies and passions outside of the job will really like distract you as well from like being that officer 24/7. So like you're a good example. It's like you are happy, but it's because it's not like work is my only thing. I have passions and involvements outside of this job, which I like for people to do because it's just like so important to not have that uniform mentality 24/7. So I have questions from my followers that I want to get into for you. There's some questions that says, okay, with over 80,000 followers you have, what inspired you to start your platform?
Honestly, I just started it to kind of like showcase my sneakers and like working out, and then it kind of created its own monster. I started it just for, it was like my yearbook, and then I guess a couple of people thought I was cool. I was able to act in some movies. I've done some reality TV stuff, so when people found out I was doing that stuff, it kind of just built a following. So that's how it started, really.
Yeah. So you didn't even initially get your platform following from being an officer. It was just from...
No, nobody thought I was a police officer. People thought I was like a personal trainer, like, CrossFit athlete. Because a lot of my stuff was based around fitness. And then, and this is before like the world of like influencing was a thing.
Yeah.
I'm a person who can connect with people. So I just was going out having conversations with people, going to events and, hey, what's your Instagram? And then next it's like, it is what it is,
Oh, that's so cool. I didn't know that. Because a lot of times when you put on the uniform, you get like followers if you post pretty much anything. So,
I mean, that definitely helps. It helped.
Oh, I'm sure.
A majority of my followers are police officers or in the first responder realm. And I think a decent amount of my followers are like young Black men.
Yeah.
So I think they just kind of saw me as being, like, this guy looks like me, dresses like me. He's, he wears Jordans, he wears these things that I wear. So he's the type of person I can relate to. So I get a lot of guys that ask me questions about law enforcement, how I got into it. And, I've given some gems to some of these dudes. A couple of guys that I followed weren't police officers, were thinking about it, and then asked me some questions that are now police officers.
Yeah.
I still keep in contact with.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you work with a non-profit organization called Reps for Responders.
Yeah.
What is your role in that organization and how did you find it? Tell us a little bit. Some people want to know about the organization and what it does.
Perfect. So it was started by my friend Frank Vos, who is a recovering alcoholic, young man. He's like 27 years old, and I feel like he's lived 10 lives.
There's some people like that.
Yeah, he's just, I think he's very mature for his age, man. I think, his journey in life has led him to be exactly where he is right now. Struggled with some depression, some alcoholism, but he was able to right the ship, and he created this this nonprofit, and we deal with first responders specifically, and we help them get resources. They do this thing on Sundays called Responder Talk, where it's like a Zoom link. You log in and have guest speakers, and they kind of just whoever the speaker is, they kind of just lock in on that and talk about the person's experiences. So a lot of guys are in recovery. Sometimes there's therapists and so on. So our job right now is just to combat police suicide, right? And because it's at an all-time high right now.
Yeah.
So I had lost a friend to suicide, and I felt like it was part of my mission statement to kind of give back to that.
Yeah.
And that's why I joined forces. And, we started a podcast called Inside the Labyrinth, which is powered by Reps for Responders. And we've interviewed, so many great human beings. We had Daryl McDaniels from DMC on the show. And that was like a bucket list interview for me.
Yeah.
He was like one of my childhood heroes. I'm a big rap guy. So, to be able to sit down and have a conversation with him. And there's a little funny backstory to that. I met him when I was 7 years old at a Western Union in Times Square. And, I shook his hand, and I actually mentioned it to him during the interview. And he goes, "Yeah, I remember you were your dad, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, you got a memory." So that was another full circle, moment for me. But, Reps for Responders is something that I love because it gives back to the first responder community and the families of first responders, military, and so on. So I'm trying to do everything I can in my power to give back, and this is part of the process.
So if someone wants to be involved with Reps for Responders, or if someone needs mental health help or anything,
you can just DM Reps for Responders, and they'll get you lined up. You can tap into the responder talks on Sundays.
That's what I was going to ask. So for the responder talk on Sundays, if anyone just wants to tap in anywhere, they can just tap into the link.
DM them and they'll give you the link, and then you go in. I think you'd be a great person to have on because you're a police
I would
officer.
love to.
Yeah. So I'll talk to Frank about that, and we'll definitely get that in motion.
Yeah, that's so cool. So, and then as far as the physical aspect of the organization, is it for mainly first responders in New York?
No. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to make this a national thing. We do events like gym meetups, right? So, we'll go to a gym, we'll get in contact with the owner, and we'll say, "Hey, listen, we're looking to throw an event. It's just for fellowship and, getting people," because cops love to get together to go out to a ball game, Franks, right?
Yeah.
So we're trying to change that now.
Something a little more positive.
Let's do something a little bit more positive, like building our body instead of destroying it. So, we're looking to do things nationally, man. I would love to be, in multiple states. Hey, we're going to, South Carolina, we're going to North Carolina, we're going to Chicago, places like that, and say, we got a gym out here. We got in contact with the owner. We have 100 slots. Come by, enjoy. That's where we're trying to get to. So
that's amazing. So when you do these workouts, these Reps for Responders workouts, is there speaking involved as well?
There's speaking. There's local vendors. So you'll have we had at one of our meetings, one of our meetups, we had a commanding officer of a whole precinct come, and he said a few words, and the fact that the CO of a precinct came and worked out with us and was just a beautiful example of leadership. His name is Lito Gill. He's a deputy inspector out here in NYPD, and you don't normally see that. You'll see a sergeant, maybe. You always see cops, but it's hard to see supervisors in this space. And, it makes a difference because you can tell because a lot of his police officers were there, guys that he, gives direct orders to. They follow him everywhere. This guy runs marathons. Half his command is there cheering him on. So, doing things like that, I think definitely can, it brings us together.
Yeah, totally. I think that's amazing. And I think that people, at least in New York, should make sure that they follow you. They can come to events, and then everybody else for now, tap into those Sundays, sessions, and that I hope that people listening, and especially first responders, will tap in and I think that that's such a great thing that you guys are doing, especially because the suicides is so prevalent right now, which is horrible. Um, we'll get to one more question, then we'll take a quick break. So you're a podcast host as well.
Yeah.
Tell us about this podcast and what it's about.
So behind the mic, we just changed the name. We're actually doing a new launch on Saturday. We have a wonderful episode coming. Yeah. So we're going to be filming on Saturday. We changed the name to Rooted Progress Podcast. And Rooted Progress is basically a metaphor for what have you done to improve your life, right? Anything, right? So like trees, right, have to be planted, right? And then they grow from the ground up. And that's kind of what like Rooted Progress is about. It's about what are you doing to set up your future? Are you planting the proper seed? Is it nutritious soil that you planted your seed in, and how are you looking to grow from there on? So it's based around like mental health and, having conversations with people who have had some struggles and, seen some adversity in their life and how they got through there. It's not always that serious. Sometimes we'll have like, food influencers on there. We got a bunch of guys that'll be on this season that'll probably change up a little bit of the narrative, not making it so serious, a little bit more lighthearted. And that's the gist of it. I'd helped with several podcasts before, and I said, you know what, why don't I just kind of do my own thing, and it led to this. So,
absolutely. Well, I'll be listening. So let's take a quick break, and we will be right back.
Absolutely.
And we're back. Had to have a little water break. And we're going to get back to the questions from my followers. I have a few more, and then we will wrap it up.
Okay.
All right. So here's another question. I'm struggling with connecting to friends and community outside of law enforcement. How can you help? That's a tough one. I feel like a lot of people deal with that.
I mean, that's a tough one, especially right now.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's kind of hard to navigate through that, because if someone is giving you a hard time because of your profession, then I don't know, man. I don't know if you can really save that friendship or save that relationship. If they don't know you for the person that you are, and they associate you with your job choice, I mean, I don't know if that's a friend that you would really want to have around. They got to be supportive of this. This is just a way to make a living. If they know who you are as a human being, then they should love and respect you no matter what you do for a profession. So that's a tough question. I would just tell that person just to be, authentic to who they are. Continue to be you, and always show up, for your loved ones and the people that you value, and the rest should just fall in place.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think boundaries, and like sometimes friendships end, and it just like is life. It's not necessarily even like your job. It's like maybe it's just you guys are growing apart, and this is just
sometimes you outgrow people.
Yeah. Next question. I'm a Black officer in law enforcement, and sometimes I struggle with imposter syndrome, thinking people don't take me serious when I'm giving commands to another race. How can I build up my confidence?
That's
a pretty loaded question, but
yeah, very, very, very loaded question. I would tell that person to get this book called The 4 Agreements, and one of the 4 agreements is don't take anything personal. So sometimes it doesn't have to do with who you are; it has to do with the uniform that you're wearing. I think a lot of times you get a lot of pushback from that. The fact that right now it's very hard to go out and be a police officer, regardless of, ethnicity, race, and so on. So, just go out there and, work on your command presence, but don't take anything personal, because I don't think it's directed towards you. I think it's more so directed at the uniform. More than ever, I've seen that people will just blatantly disrespect police officers just because of the uniform, and I'm almost positive that if that person approached them, uniform it would probably go completely different. You'd just be shouldering a load that you can't handle, just kind of go to work, put your best foot forward, and believe in who you are, man. I mean, if you got to the police academy, you're in a command and you're working, they chose you for a reason, man. You got to have some belief in yourself, and you got to have that self-talk has to be positive. You can't doubt yourself.
Yeah, 100%. I read that book, The Four Agreements, so that's good.
Oh my God, changed my life. Changed my life.
I didn't read it. I listened to it. Yeah, same thing.
Same
thing. Okay, another question. I am struggling with motivation. I'm trying to pass my physical exam, and I'm bad at push-ups and running. Can you help give me advice?
Yes. So bad at push-ups, I would start with banded push-ups. From banded push-ups, you can go to push-ups on your knees, right? And then just, you work on volume. Being able to scale the push-up and then eventually being able to do a full push-up, that's where you start. Rome wasn't built in a day. You got to crawl before you run, right? So building a great baseline with your push-ups, start there. With the running, I would say go to a track, and I always tell people do not run on a treadmill. A treadmill is going to force you to run, and it's going to have you running at a speed that you probably can't maintain because the ground underneath you is moving. So if you go to a track, right, and start doing, run the straightaways, jog the turns, and then you start to do that, maybe walk while you're resting, right? And then start to do like 400-meter intervals, right? So that's one lap around a track. Make sure that you get that track. Make sure that track is a 400-meter track. If not, if it's something a little bit smaller, just do the calculations yourself. But learning how to work your splits, that is clutch. Because if you come out of the gate too hot, then you're going to fizzle out, and then you're going to end up not completing the run in the time that you're supposed to. So, I would definitely say, do some track work, make sure you're hitting the pavement. And as far as motivation, remember why you want this job and how bad do you really want it. If you really want it, you're going to do any and everything it takes to get there. It's, sometimes you might have to dial in your nutrition. You have to work on your hydration, work on your recovery, because a lot of times people just run, and they're not stretching. They're not doing post-run stretches or pre-run stretches. Make sure you're on top of those things and just don't lose sight of the end goal. You want to be a police officer. There's some things that, you might have to cut out in your diet and some things you might not want to do physically, but that'll get you over that hump.
Yeah, definitely. Looks like you have inspired a lot of people and officers with your huge following. How have you navigated any hate you get online?
Great question. I don't take anything personal. You're going to get people who like you, and you're going to get people who don't like you. And especially in this profession, there's going to be probably more people that don't like you than they like you. So you're always going to get trolls and comments. You just got to keep your head. I never let anything get to me personally. I have a lot of people who have reached out that I have helped, and I've given some advice to, and it is for sure helped them, and in turn that fills my cup. So I mean, dealing with hate, I don't really try to deal with it. I just always defer to all of the people that I've helped.
Yeah. So focus on the good you've done than like these random.
You can't focus on the bad. There's always going to be a keyboard warrior. There's always going to be somebody saying that, something, negative to you, but you get with good comes bad. So you just got to take both.
Yeah, for sure. What motivates you to keep going and just being yourself through all the negative that you see? Because
in all the negative that I see, there's always a beacon of light. You always have a call or someone that you've seen, and they'll tell you something that you did that was great for them. There's always a beacon of light. We go to work, we see some horrible things, and we knew this taking this job, but in turn with the bad things, you see a lot of good things. But I think you have to work on that lens. You got to look for the positives, because if you fixate too much on the negative that we see, that will consume you, and you'll end up just being in a very bad place mentally. So just, focus on the little beacons of light that we get every so often, and try not to be so fixated on the negative. There's always going to be negative in the world, but if you just focus on the good things in life, you can get by it.
Yeah, definitely. Where do you see yourself or your career going from here? Do you have any hopes and dreams, or are you kind of just like rolling with what you got right
Yeah, I've got some hopes. I've got some dreams. I would love for the next portion of my life to be, you know, in the mental health space, just being able to be like a peer counselor of some sort. I coach high school football. I'd love to do that, just to be working with the youth, and maybe some youth ministry at some point in my life, being able to work with at-risk youth and giving them some hope and, some guidance. That's something that I'm actually leaning into right now.
now? That's
I
awesome.
feel like, yeah, that's a calling that I feel like, the Creator has pushed me in that direction. That's something that I'm looking to do. As far as retirement, I could leave next year, or I can stay another 2.
That was my next question about your retirement. That was a personal question.
Yeah.
So, yeah, do you think you're gonna stay like 25, or what's next for you?
I don't know, man. The position that I'm in right now is a pretty awesome position,
Right.
and it's a light lift, right? So I'm not stressed
Yeah.
out when I go to work. I'm helping people. Would I stay past my 20? It's a possibility, but if something good falls in my lap that is up my alley, something that I'm looking to really dive into, then I would leave for that. But I wouldn't leave just to leave.
Yeah.
Some people are just fed up and they're like, I'm going. As soon as they get their 20, they want to leave. But I like what I do. I like going to work every day. I come in smiling, with my lunch pail and my thermos. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
ready to go.
That's good. That's really good that you enjoy going to work every day. That's a lot of hours of our week. So,
Yeah.
one more question, and this one's from my fiance. If you ever want to get rid of any shoes, please don't wear the same size shoe. So, for people who are don't follow you yet, you're a huge sneakerhead. This is kind of off topic, but are you still like a sneakerhead, and is like shoes a big part of who you
Yeah.
are?
That's something that will never leave me. It's a big part of who I am. I'm a collector. I'm not as bad as I used to be. I used to be like really bad. I toned it down a lot. Like I'll only get releases that I truly want. Like I used to just get them, but now like,
Yeah.
if there's a pair of sneakers that I had when I was like 12 that I destroyed that I didn't get, I'll go out and get them. But yeah, I'm gonna forever be a sneakerhead. I have a whole room dedicated to my sneakers.
I see that. How many sneakers do you have? Do you know? Or
Now, I'm like in the 250 range. I
oh
used
my
to,
God.
yeah, I used to have like close to like 400 pair, and then I offloaded a bunch. I had a bunch in like storage that I sold and made a great piece of money on, and did some things with that. And then
Yeah, that's cool.
then I was on a mission to get like my holy grails of sneakers, and I have 3 grails, and I have 2 out of the 3. The third one I'll never be able to afford, so I'm not even gonna. I just took it off the list. But
Well, then we need to know what's your shoe of choice with your uniform.
ooh. So now I get to wear whatever I want. I'm in plain clothes.
Oh, you're in play clothes. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Oh, wow. That's great.
So my go-to is like a nice Jordan 1. So like I'll wear I have tons of Jordan 1s. I have probably every pair that came out. So I kind of rotate through Jordan 1s. That's like
Nice.
my work shoe.
That's so new. And you're walking in and you're connecting with like the youth and stuff. And I'm sure Hot Topic is like, you have some sick shoes on, bro. Like,
Yeah, it's like
that's probably a nice conversation starter with
always.
kids.
The few boutiques in the city that I work in, and they all know me on a first name basis. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, and our last question, and then I'll ask you about your handles and everything. But is there any final takeaways you can leave with our listeners?
Oh, man, so for the first responder community, I'm pretty sure a majority of your listeners are police officers or connected somehow, some way.
Yeah.
Make sure, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, make sure that you pour into yourself. This job is meant for us to do it for a period of time, and it takes so much from us. You have to remember that this is not who you are solely, right? You were something long before you were a police officer. We wear many hats, we play many roles in many different people's lives. Never lose sight of that, right? I understand, you want to be prideful about being a police officer, but, there's things that happen in our career that sometimes, may lead us to, maybe getting suspended or maybe, something like that happening. And when you're sitting in that moment where, you're not currently in your profession, right? Maybe you got suspended for 30 days or whatever. You will spiral into a dark place if you don't have a great foundation. So remember who you are, pour into you and pour into your loved ones, man. Because if you can't take care of yourself, how could you possibly take care of anyone else? Don't let this job consume you, because you are so much more than a police officer. You are a human being. You are, mother, brother, cousin, so on. Just lean into that, because, I think a lot of people get consumed with, I am a police officer. When somebody asks you, like, who you are, and if your first answer is, I'm a police officer, got to change that.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's really good advice.
Yeah.
So where can we follow you online? Give us your plugs. Give us all the places we can find you.
Oh, all right. I am the real Jumpman J on Instagram. I'm also on TikTok. I just kind of went over to TikTok recently. So that's where I'm at. I'm not really on anything else, just because it's kind of tough to do all of that stuff.
It is, for sure.
Social media kind of is a little draining. So those are the two platforms that I'm at. I'm also connected with Reps for Responders. We have a podcast called Inside the Labyrinth Podcast, which is powered by Reps for Responders. I'm over there, and right now, the Behind the Mic podcast, which is being renamed, currently it'll be renamed on Saturday, to Rooted Progress Podcast.
Awesome. And we appreciate everything that you've done for us today. Like, all the listeners, I'm sure they're going to get a huge takeaway from this. I did myself. So really appreciate all the work you're doing and all the stuff that you're doing for the community and for the youth and pretty much everyone. It really does make a difference. So I'm inspired by you. I know more people will be as well. And I just really appreciate your time, and be safe.
Thank you so much. You be safe as well.
Thank you.